The phone rang at 12:14 in the morning. My sister's voice was barely a whisper. "Whatever happens tonight, do not trust Jenna." Before I could ask what she meant, the line went dead. Then someone started banging on my front door. When I looked through the peephole, my son was standing outside, but his eyes were empty. And behind him, shadows waited silently in the darkness. My name is John, and this is my story. The phone rang at 12:14 in the morning. Not one of those sleepy little calls from a wrong number. This ring was sharp, urgent, violent enough to pull me out of a dead sleep with my heart already racing before I even opened my eyes. For a few confused seconds, I just sat there in the darkness, listening to it echo through the house. Then I looked at the screen. Sharon, my sister. She lived 4 houses down from me and hated talking on the phone after dark. Said nighttime calls carried bad news. So the moment I saw her name glowing in the darkness, fear settled into my stomach before I even answered. Hello? At first, all I heard was breathing. Not normal breathing, panicked breathing, ragged, trembling. Then her voice came through in a whisper so strained, it barely sounded like her at all. Jan, listen to me carefully. Sharon, what's wrong? Whatever happens tonight, she whispered, do not trust Jenna. A chill ran through my entire body. What are you talking about? Where are you? But before she could answer, the line exploded with static. Then the call disconnected. I stared at the screen in confusion. And that was when the knocking started. 3 heavy blows against my front door. Not polite knocking, not the uncertain knock of someone needing help. These were hard, flat-palmed hits that rattled the walls. My blood turned cold. Another bang, then another. The entire house felt too quiet around it. Richard, I shouted upstairs instinctively. Richard. No answer, which made no sense. My son had always been a light sleeper. Even as a child, the sound of the refrigerator opening would wake him up. But now, nothing. The knocking continued, slow, rhythmic, almost patient. I grabbed my tablet from the coffee table and opened the security camera app with shaking hands. Every camera was black. No connection. I refreshed it again. Nothing. My chest tightened. I hurried to the front window and flipped on the porch light. The bulb didn't come on. Outside remained swallowed in darkness. That was the moment fear stopped feeling irrational. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. I dialed Sharon back immediately. Straight to voicemail. My hands were trembling so badly now I nearly dropped the phone trying to call 911. The operator answered calmly while I struggled to explain that someone was outside my house and my cameras were suddenly offline. She promised officers were on the way. And the second I hung up, the knocking stopped. Complete silence. No footsteps. No movement. Nothing. Honestly, that silence scared me more than the noise had. Because suddenly, my imagination became worse than reality. I don't know what possessed me to walk toward the door. Maybe fear does strange things to people. Maybe part of me still hoped this was all some misunderstanding. But slowly, carefully, I leaned toward the peephole, and what I saw almost stopped my heart. Richard. My son's face was inches from the glass. But something about him was horribly wrong. His eyes looked vacant, empty, like he was awake and unconscious at the same time. And behind him, 6 tall figures stood motionless in the darkness, all dressed in black, their faces hidden beneath hoods. Not moving, not speaking, just standing there behind my son, like shadows waiting for permission to enter. I stumbled backwards so hard I crashed into the hallway table. For one horrifying second, Richard smiled. Not warmly, not naturally, just a slow, lifeless curl at the corner of his mouth. Then the police sirens appeared in the distance. The red and blue lights flashed through my windows, and suddenly the figures outside vanished from the peephole. By the time officers forced the door open minutes later, there was nobody there. No Richard. No hooded figures. Nothing. And then, as if the night hadn't already become surreal enough, the guest bedroom door upstairs creaked open. Jenna stepped out wearing pajamas, rubbing her eyes sleepily. "Mom?" she asked softly. "What's happening?" I stared at her, my mouth suddenly dry. "Where's Richard?" "Oh," she said casually. "Didn't he tell you? He left this afternoon for an investor meeting downtown. He'll be back tomorrow night." My stomach dropped. That made no sense. Richard never left town without telling me. Never. I tried explaining everything to the officers. Sharon's warning, the banging at the door, Richard's face outside. But as I spoke, I watched their expressions change. Concern became doubt. The older officer glanced toward Jenna. She lowered her eyes sadly and sighed. "My mother-in-law hasn't been sleeping much lately," she said gently. "I've been worried about her. I cannot fully describe what it feels like to have your fear dismissed while you are still living inside it." The officer's voice softened. "Ma'am, sometimes stress can create very vivid episodes, especially late at night. Episodes, hallucinations, nightmares." I stood there speechless while Jenna rested a comforting hand on my shoulder. "It's okay, Mom," she whispered sweetly. "You're safe now." But when I looked into her eyes, I didn't see concerns. I saw calculations. And in that moment, my sister's warning came rushing back into my mind. Do not trust Jenna. For the rest of the night, I didn't sleep at all. I lay awake, staring into the darkness, replaying every second over and over again. The disconnected cameras, the dead porch light, Richard's empty eyes, and Jenna, calm through all of it. Too calm. By morning, I needed answers. I threw on my sweater and walked straight to Sharon's house. I rang the doorbell 3 times. Nothing. Then I started knocking. "Sharon, open the door!" Finally, her neighbor stepped outside looking nervous before I even spoke. "She's gone," the woman whispered. My stomach tightened. "Gone where?" "She left during the night." "Why?" The woman's face was drained of color. Then she looked over my shoulder toward the street, as if she was afraid someone might be watching us. "You need to stop asking questions," she whispered shakily. "They're everywhere." "Who's everywhere?" But she backed towards her door immediately. "I don't know anything." Then she slammed it shut. I stood there, frozen in the cold morning air, feeling something unfamiliar settle deep inside me. Not confusion anymore, certainty. Something terrible was happening around my family, and Jenna was connected to it. When I returned home, the smell of coffee drifted from the kitchen. Jenna stood at the counter humming softly while pouring 2 mugs. She smiled when she saw me. "You look exhausted, Mom." I studied her face carefully. Too composed, too normal. "Are you absolutely sure Richard is away on business?" "Of course," she replied instantly. "Why?" No hesitation. No emotion. Just smooth answers prepared too quickly. She handed me a mug. "You need rest." I looked down at the coffee, then back at her. And for the first time in my life, I was afraid of someone standing inside my own kitchen. I took the mug but didn't drink. Something was wrong. Richard never left without telling me. Never. "Drink it while it's hot," Jenna urged, her eyes watching me carefully. I raised the cup to my lips, pretended to sip, and made a small sound of appreciation. "Thank you, dear." Satisfied, she turned back to the counter. "I'm going to make breakfast. Why don't you rest on the couch?" Good idea, I said quietly. I walked to the living room, sat on the couch, and waited. A few minutes later, I heard Jenna go upstairs. Her bedroom door closed. I set the coffee mug on the table, untouched, and stared at the dark liquid inside. My sister's warning echoed in my mind. Do not trust Jenna. The neighbor's terrified words. They're everywhere. And Jenna's too convenient story about Richard leaving for a meeting for 2 days. None of it made sense. After Jenna left for work, I climbed the stairs slowly, carefully, and slipped into Jenna's bedroom. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would give me away. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I knew I'd recognize it when I found it. I opened her dresser drawers. Nothing but clothes. I checked the nightstand. Empty, except for a phone charger. Then I saw it. A lockbox under the bed. I pulled it out, hands shaking. It wasn't locked. The latch clicked open easily. Inside were papers, bank statements, letters, and a handwritten note on expensive stationery. Your debt will be forgiven. The offering must be made by midnight. The contract is binding. Failure to comply will result in collection of your life instead. Below it, a signature I couldn't read, and a symbol, a circle, with a triangle inside, surrounded by strange markings. My blood ran cold. Beneath the note were more documents, gambling receipts, credit card statements showing tens of thousands in debt, and a deposit slip, $500,000 dated for tomorrow. $500,000. In exchange for what? I looked at the note again. The offering must be made by midnight. And then I understood. Richard wasn't at work. Richard was the offering. I shoved the papers back into the box and ran downstairs. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial the number. The phone rang and a gruff voice answered. Hello? Benny, I gasped. I need your help. Right now. Benny Carson was a retired police officer, one of my oldest friends. If anyone could help me, it was him. Jan, what's wrong? It's Richard. Jenna's involved in something. Something terrible. I think they're going to kill him. There was a pause. Then his voice sharpened. Where are you? Home. I found papers. A contract. Something about an offering at midnight tonight. Stay calm, he said firmly. Hurry, I whispered. Benny was at my house in 30 minutes. Benny's truck screeched to a stop in front of my house. He jumped out. I opened the door before he could knock. Jan, what happened? I explained to him what happened and showed him the receipts and symbol I found in Jenna's room. I told him she lied to me and about my missing sister's warning. I told Benny I think my son is being held against his will. Whatever is going on there will be something happening at midnight tonight, and Jenna will be there to witness it. He told me he will call in some favors. That evening when Jenna came home, she asked how I was feeling. I told her I am convinced it was a terrible nightmare and I am doing fine. She agreed and told me maybe I should drink a special blend of her tea tonight and I would get a good night's sleep. I agreed with her. About 8:30. Jenna appeared at my bedroom door. Mom, I have a special blend of my tea guaranteed to help you sleep without hallucinations. I took the tea and pretended to sip. Satisfied, she stepped away and left the room. My door was left ajar. She came back 20 minutes later. By then, I emptied the tea in my plant and the cup was empty. I was curled up in bed, sleeping like a baby. She stood over me. I kept my eyes closed, my breathing steady. Mom? She said softly. I didn't move. Satisfied, she walked away. I heard her going down the stairs. Then the sound of the garage door opening. I went to the window just in time to see her car backing out of the driveway. She was leaving, and I knew exactly where she was going. Benny was waiting 2 houses down, I called him. She just left, I said, running to meet him. We have to follow her. Get in, Benny said. I climbed into the back seat. Ezra was already on his radio, calling for additional backup. Teddy was checking a handgun. What exactly are we dealing with here? asked Teddy and Ezra. As Benny introduced us, Benny filled them in. They were also 2 retired officers and friends of Benny's. As he pulled out, keeping Jenna's car just barely in sight ahead of us. "What exactly are we dealing with here, Jan?" Benny asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "But I think it's some kind of cult. They have Richard. They're going to sacrifice him." The word felt ridiculous, saying it out loud. But Benny didn't laugh. "We've been hearing rumors," he said grimly. "Missing persons cases in the area. People with debts and family members who suddenly disappear. We could never prove anything." We followed Jenna's car out of town, into the back roads, deeper and deeper into the woods. After 20 minutes, her tail lights disappeared around a bend. When we rounded the corner, the road was empty. "She turned off somewhere," Ezra said. Benny slowed down, scanning the trees. Then he spotted it, a narrow dirt path, barely visible, leading into the forest. "There!" He killed the headlights and turned onto the path. We drove slowly, branches scraping against the sides of the truck. After what felt like an eternity, we saw it. A cabin, deep in the woods, flickering light coming from inside, and Jenna's car parked outside. Benny parked the truck a safe distance away. We all got out quietly. "Teddy, call for backup," Benny whispered. "Ezra, you're with me. Jan, you stay." "I'm coming," I said firmly. He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. We crept toward the cabin. Through the grimy window, I could see movement inside. Shadows, figures in dark robes. And in the center of the room, tied to a chair, was Richard. His head was slumped forward. He looked unconscious, or worse. Around him stood 6 hooded figures, chanting in a language I didn't understand. Jenna stood off to the side, her face illuminated by candlelight. She was watching them with cold, empty eyes. "We go on 3, Benny whispered. He counted down silently with his fingers. 3, 2, 1. Benny kicked the door open. Ezra flipped on a massive floodlight he'd been carrying. Blinding white light flooded the cabin. "Police! Nobody move!" The chanting stopped. The hooded figures froze, shielding their eyes from the light. Jenna's face went white. "Get on the ground!" Benny shouted, gun raised. Benny rushed to Richard, cutting the ropes binding him to the chair. Richard's eyes fluttered open. He was alive. "Mom?" he mumbled, confused. "What? Where am I?" The hooded figures started to scatter, but Ezra's backup had arrived. 3 police cars screamed up the dirt path, sirens wailing, lights flashing. There was nowhere to run. One by one, the cult members were forced to the ground, handcuffed. Jenna didn't fight. She just stood there, staring at me with pure hatred. "You did not drink the tea," she said coldly. Richard was taken to the hospital. Physically, he was unharmed. They'd drugged him heavily, but the doctors said he'd recover. Psychologically, that would take longer. He didn't remember much. Being grabbed outside our house, hooded figures. Jenna's face, cold and expressionless as they dragged her away. The nightmares, the therapist said, would last for years. Jenna was arrested along with 6 others. The investigation uncovered a network of debt collectors who used ancient rituals to balance accounts. People who couldn't pay were offered a choice, a life for a debt. Jenna had chosen Richard's life for her freedom from $500,000 in debt. The trial made headlines. Suburban mother attempts ritual sacrifice of husband for money. She was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Sharon came home a week later. She'd been hiding at a women's shelter 3 towns over, terrified they'd come for her too. When I asked her how she knew, she just shook her head. "I saw them at the house one night, heard them talking. They threatened me, said if I told anyone, I'd be next." She hugged me tightly. "I'm so sorry I couldn't do more. I was so scared." "You warned me," I told her. "That's what mattered." Richard is recovering. We don't talk about Jenna. We don't talk about that night. But sometimes, late at night, I hear him pacing in his room, awake, unable to sleep. And I understand, because I still see it, too. The face at the peephole, those empty, drugged eyes, the hooded figures standing in the darkness behind him. The image is burned into my mind forever. But we survived. And that's what matters. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love us are the ones we need to fear most. And sometimes the only thing standing between life and death is a mother who refuses to drink her a cup of tea. Sometimes the monsters aren't hiding under the bed. They're sitting across from us at the kitchen table, pouring a cup of tea. Jenna is behind bars and Richard is home, but the silence in this house still feels heavy. It's a reminder that you never truly know what someone is capable of when they're backed into a corner. But I want to hear from you. Have you ever had a gut feeling about someone that turned out to be true? Or a family secret that changed everything? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read as many as I can. If this story kept you looking over your shoulder, hit that like button and subscribe to My Story Vault TV. It helps us keep these stories alive. And remember, next time someone offers you a drink you didn't pour yourself, you might want to think twice. I'm Jan, and I'll see you in the next vault.